I'm presenting work that I've done with Françoise Carré at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. And part of what's great about this session is we've got quite a wide range of different sectors. We're looking at retail in the United States. And different ones of us have presented different versions of the many choices that you could have with digital technologies transforming work. And we're breaking it into four different main arguments about the kinds of impacts that new IT can have on work. One is obviously automation, job destruction, and that's the one that's gotten the most headlines. There's also a optimistic vision of digital self-determination. So actual enrichment of the work. In some ways, this is what's described through augmentation. And in retail, there are some loud voices, particularly coming from the management side, talking about how the implementation of the new digital technologies is indeed going to lead to digital self-determination. So this is an official of the Food Marketing Institute of the United States. The retailers are looking for ways to remove redundancies and more menial type tasks from daily activities from their associates. That's the American word for workers, so they could spend more time working directly with the customer. So that's the vision that they're putting forward. There's, of course, also a very pessimistic vision of digital taylorism with very close sort of direction of workers' work and digital monitoring surveillance. That's the more critical voices have put forward. But there's also quite an ample literature on contingency. And the whole discussion of social shaping, of course, is arguing that there's quite a bit of contingency in these relationships. What do Françoise and I expect from US retail? Well, in terms of job destruction, automation, we have argued previously that we should not expect a retail apocalypse, a term that the trade press was using a lot around 2017, 2018. And because both consumers and retailers actually still want stores. And our focus here is on stores, not so much on e-commerce per se. In terms of digital self-determination, we're skeptical of that as well, given retail's very long-standing, at this point, 50 plus years in the United States of going with a low-road version of trying to reduce labor costs. Digital taylorism, we were less certain going into this work. As we'll see, we ended up saying it's fairly contingent, and it's kind of a variant of digital taylorism is the dominant thing that we find. So we're looking at US retail as, in some sense, an extreme case. The US is particularly deregulated, and although grocery stores are more unionized than many sectors, overall the retail sector has a very low rate of union density. And retail itself as a sector has been a leader in exploring what are sometimes called exit options, ways to avoid regulations and to sort of flexibilize work in various ways. Our core source here is 63 one-hour interviews with workers, frontline managers and workers in stores, using the user interviews platform, which we found really helpful for anybody else who's thinking about doing sort of in-depth interviews, recruiting for in-depth interviews. We also built on a large number of earlier interviews, most of which are what we're calling mini interviews, conducted during Zoom sort of speed dating style meetups online conferences. And we're looking at, again, store-based retail. We're looking primarily at grocery and big box general merchandise. So the Walmarts and Targets of the world, as well as the Krogers and Safeways, which may soon be merging. And we're focusing on free frontline jobs in these stores and the corresponding technology. So cashiers, the key technology there is self-checkout. Stockers, there's actually not just one, but a variety of new technologies happening there, but particularly a version of algorithmic management. And then online order fillers, where the order picking technology was sort of present at the creation of that job. There is some job destruction, and this is looking particularly at cashiers. And what you see is that in retail overall, between 2019 and 22, basically the pandemic years, there is another year of data. We have to update this table, but it doesn't look that different. Between 2019 and 22, there was an 8% decrease in cashier jobs. That's 240,000 cashier jobs in the United States. So that's a significant hit. What you can see is that if you look specifically at grocery stores and general merchandise, that loss was even greater. But we would not describe this as a retail apocalypse, because there's also the corresponding increase in the order filling jobs, which show up in a more capacious category of stockers and order fillers that has grown rapidly during this same period of time. So yes, important job losses, but not a retail apocalypse. And our interviews also, both managers and workers talked about the replacement of cashiers with self-checkout. Are we seeing job enrichment? Not so much. So in self-checkout, the quote is, I watch people scanning to see if they're trying to steal, which is, I mean, that's one part of the job. The other part of the job is troubleshooting for all the customers who are having a problem, because we always do with self-checkout. There's the introduction of new devices that give you access to additional information from a variety of sources, the ability to communicate, managers to communicate to workers, workers to communicate to managers, workers to communicate horizontally. And here's one worker at a cashier Target using the device every day is wonderful, but it makes it less social with the customers. There are times when I stop and look around, I see all the other team members on their device. So that's not a recipe for great interaction. In the stocking space, the story is more speed up than freeing up workers. What about digital taylorism? Well, order picking is quite tailorized, and there's a couple of quotes here. It's very metric driven. You have to be on your P's and Q's all the time. They're watching those metrics at all levels. You feel constantly rushed. You have a deadline every hour of the day. That's actually a supervisor at Walmart. But beyond order picking itself, where the taylorism is built in, the digital taylorism is built in, there's a growing use of data analytics. So this is not true algorithmic decision-making, but sort of algorithm-informed decision-making. And here's a quote from Whole Foods. We've restructured 4, 5, 6 times in this store. A lot of stress on specific people in the store. They're just constantly worrying if they're doing a good enough job. There's also increased levels of surveillance. And there's a quote here. I know we have some really good camera systems in our stores. A lot of times, so this is a Target worker. A lot of times our Minnesota team, so the headquarters is Minnesota, will get on and kind of watch. So our sense is that the surveillance potential is large. The use of surveillance, it's a lot harder to tell. That is not something that managers were prepared to talk to us about. So we definitely have some elements of digital taylorism. But we summarize the overall situation as chaotic rationalization. So it's definitely rationalization, tailorization, but in the midst of sort of a wide range of chaotic factors. Perhaps the most important is just that customers are unpredictable. So this is a Home Depot stalker. You don't really know what to prepare for. Coworker called off sick. Church just let out. Every single customer seems to have an existential crisis that requires a lot of time. During my shift, I'll be interrupted an unlimited number of times. And a lot of people said things like that. At the same time, the dominant model, certainly in US retail, is what is described as a low road approach, minimal staffing, minimal training, high turnover. What that means is that the workers in the store are often new because of the high turnover, inexperienced, they're relatively few. They may not be highly committed. This may be one of a number of jobs that they're bouncing in between. And so this is a quote from a Target stalker. Last time I was at, we had a big problem with shortage, which means basically that the inventory that the system says you have does not correspond to what's actually on the shelf because they cut a lot of corners and did not spend a lot of money on payroll. Now, in all fairness, I should say that this Target worker said, my current store is doing a much better job with that. So it does vary, but our argument is that the more common option is the low road option. That means not only are the customers unpredictable, but your coworkers may be unpredictable. New technology itself introduces whole new sources of chaos. So in more order picking, of course, these are online orders, so there's a whole new channel for unpredictable customer activity. And so this affects order pickers, but the way work is organized in these stores, and I'm looking at Alejandro Castillo because he's had a similar finding from Walmart's in Chile, is there's a lot more cross-training and multitasking. So you have cashiers at Target running the orders out. You have stockers who, when a lot of orders come in, the stockers just get pulled off and put onto order picking. And with or without training, I mean, we have one quote where they say, well, sometimes they just sort of hand you the phone and say, let's go, New tech also has a learning curve. And because there's constant iterations of new generations of tech, the learning curve is constantly being repeated. So this is at Home Depot. It's kind of like the guys in the corporate office sit and say, oh, this should work. Let's throw it down to the store and see if it does. Other thing is, we did not get any extra hours to be able to learn, to have that learning curve. Here it is, day one, make it work. Beyond these issues, the new tech, well, I guess that is the issue, simply just doesn't work a lot of the time. So long list of technologies where there were problems with the tech, self-checkout, order picking, inventory, just cloud and bandwidth problems, Internet of Things. So that's the kind of thing where there's sort of a smart thermometer in the cooler that unfortunately gets turned on every time there's a defrost cycle. So you have to run to the cooler, even though it's actually doing what it ought to do. And the handheld devices and so on. So summarizing, again, we're looking at frontline jobs in US grocery and general merchandise stores. We found some job destruction. You could call it a cashier apocalypse without a retail apocalypse. Not a lot of job enrichment. We did find, actually, the one instance where we found a fairly convincing example of job enrichment was from an interview at Wegmans. For those of you in the Northeast, that's a very distinctive chain with a really good reputation for as a place to work and as a place to shop. So it's exception that proves the rule. Digital tailorism, well, it's mixed. So you've got the tailorization of digital tailorization of order picking, and the kind of speed up in multitasking, but a lot of chaos. And so we're using the word chaotic rationalization. We were interested to find that we're not the only ones who talk about chaos. So Axonify, which is a tech company that sort of sells software for worker management communication, talks about chaos. Mercer Consulting, which is this slide is from, or actually, I guess I have to show it. I got to be looking at this screen because this one doesn't show the animations. Okay. Yeah. So other folks have also found chaos, and some researchers, Clora Nice and Evans and Kitchen, in Evans and Kitchen case, actually looking at an Irish retail store, have reported somewhat similar findings. What can we do? Well, tech transparency is key, and data privacy is key. And the United States has not moved very fast or very far on that. The Europeans are somewhat ahead, at least on data privacy. And as others have argued, the strongest tool for actually sort of handling this kind of chaotic rationalization, limiting it, is worker voice. And that means that unions need to be bargaining proactively before the implementation happens. I was actually a couple of weeks ago at a United Food and Commercial Workers Attorneys conference in California, where they were setting, sort of discussing contract language to negotiate upcoming contracts. And communication workers similarly are beginning to do that kind of bargaining. Our last bullet here is that the ideal thing would actually have worker input into technology design and implementation. We're far from that in the United States, but as Ayaj said, unless we have this kind of input and control, probably we're going to have a lot more chaos. Okay, thanks.